Hi again, everyone. I'm Bob Burg. Welcome to the Go Giver Influencers Facebook Live show. Today's episode is Influential Latte Factor. And we're going to find out why that latte may be more financially influential than you think. You know, financial acumen, financial intelligence is such an important area of life for a person to understand. Not because money is everything, although as the late Zig Ziglar used to say from stage, money may not be everything, but it ranks right up there with oxygen. And sometimes it seems that way. But you know what money really does? It gives us choices. And we've talked about that before. And so when you understand money and how it grows and why it grows, it creates an environment for you where you're operating out of a position of strength. So I first came across David Bach's work many, many years ago. I read his book, The Automatic Millionaire. Now, the title, Automatic Millionaire, it's not a get rich quick. No, what it is he really talks about that if you create certain habits around finances that are productive and positive, and you make these habits automatic, okay? So it's not something you have to actively think about every time. You're naturally going to do things in a correct way that leads toward building wealth. Fantastic book. I've read, I think, all of David Bach's book. So, and his big breakthrough came on Oprah when he was on there several times back in the day. Since then, he's sort of been positioned as the financial guy. He's really good, and he's a really nice guy. So one of his key points had to do with lattes, and we will save that for a while for our guest today. But he took that part of the book where he talked about what you could do with the money saved from lattes. And he wrote a parable about it. And now, if you're going to write a parable about something, who better to have on your team and as your co-author than Mr. John David Mann, the guy who I call the greatest writer on the face of the earth, and maybe other places aside from Earth, except for I'm really not sure what kind of life is outside of that. But if there is, then he's just the greatest writer in the universe. So we're going to talk about this book. It's called the Latte Factor, and why you don't have to be rich to live rich. Now, this was my pre-published galley copy. This isn't the book itself. I'm waiting for mine. I'll be giving out plenty of those as I gave out plenty of The Automatic Millionaire. So I don't even have an introduction for John because you already know John, right? John is the co-author, lead writer, storyteller of Go Giver, and tons of other books that have made all the different bestseller lists. Sometimes his name is on it. Sometimes he's been sworn to secrecy under penalty of being sued big time by the author who didn't want him to know that he was on it. And so, but John's a prolific author. You can check out his site at johndavidmann.com. Shannon will be posting that as well as the other link to the books. There's a page for the new Latte Factor book, both their book page and the Amazon page. Now, one thing I've got to say is I've been hearing a rumor about John, because he and David have both been doing lots of media for the new book, which, by the way, is just selling wonderfully well. And I've been hearing people say that John has blamed me personally for ruining his Hollywood screenwriting career. So I'm going to have to ask him about this and question this gossip and see what's really going on. First, hey, John David Mann, welcome.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm great. Yourself?
I'm excellent. I'm very good. Nice to be here.
Yeah, congrats on the book.
Yeah, hey, thank you.
You know, when you see it on Amazon at like number 36,
yeah,
I don't mean 36 in financial books. I mean 36, right? Yeah. And it's staying just about there. That's good. That means it's off to a fantastic start.
Yeah, cracked top 100 on its first day, and it stayed there all week. And then on the weekend, it kind of dibbled up in the 100s. And then Monday morning, second week, it got back down the top 100 again. Still there right now. Here is a copy of the hardcover. I love the cover. They did such a lovely job.
Fantastic job.
Yep. The latte with the dollar sign. And
I got that. Yeah.
See the gold? Gold means money. Anyway.
So much. What do you call that in copyright screenwriting? It's those you're layering it or something with all sorts of meaning, subliminal meaning. I
I
don't know.
think they call it duh or something like that.
So I want to know, what's this about the screenwriting career of JDM that I singularly ruined?
Actually, I just said this 2 hours ago on a live podcast. Actually, the way I say it is, Bob Burg ruined my career. It's better if you make it shorter, so I don't say screen. Actually, what I usually go, I like to say, Bob Burg ruined my career, and it never fails to it gets the biggest laugh of anything I say. So I keep saying it. So, I'm sorry to dump on you. I tell people, so the point that I'm making is that all of the greatest things in my life that have ever happened, I go through a list of them. I tot them up and I go through that list, and not a single one has come about as a result of my plan. For example, I was on my way to Hollywood. That was my plan. My plan was to be a screenwriter. My plan was to write screenplays for movies, become an A-list writer, go to the Oscars, blah, blah. It's a big mountain to climb, but that was my plan. And I'd spent years already pursuing that. When a friend of mine said, hey, would you write this book with me? And he showed me the concept and the drafts he'd written so far and said, I'd like you to write this with me. And I was like, this is not what I'm doing. This is an interruption in my perfect plan. Of course, that friend was Bob Burg, and The Go-Giver changed my life. And in fact, it didn't really ruin my career. It actually made my career, but that's just goes to show you that sometimes the world around you knows you better than you know yourself.
Well, it's lucky you consulted first with who you call your higher power. Her name is Anna.
That's right.
And she said, yeah, write this thing.
That's right.
So, okay. So I want to go in and get into this book. David Bach first, he approached you probably 10 years ago to do this book, because his concept of the Latte Factor really hit a nerve. So it struck a nerve. So he asked you about 10 years ago, but it didn't happen. So, and I know we have a lot we want to get into, so we don't have to take a long time with that, but I want to know, why did it take 10 years?
Yeah, it was even more than 10 years, really. So long story short, I interviewed David for a magazine I was writing for, Networking Times, or actually, I forget which magazine, but a long time ago. This is years prior to The Go-Giver. And I interviewed him for one issue. I didn't know him at all, and I had not read any of his books, but I kind of knew his reputation. Money guy, finance guy. And honestly, I kind of thought, okay, this is going to be an interview about money and savings and 401k plans and blah, blah, blah. None of which really interested me that much, to be honest. But, it's my job. I interview guys. I'm an editor, so I had an interview. And I was fascinated. And toward the end of that interview, he said something I'll never forget. He said, John, my belief is that every one of us was put on this earth for a unique and special purpose, to do something that nobody else on the face of the earth could ever do. And the tragedy of it is that most of us aren't doing that thing because we're too busy leasing and loaning our lives just to keep making the ends meet. And then he said, my mission is to help millions of people own their lives so they can do what they were put here to do. And I got off the phone with that interview and I thought, dude, I was very moved by that. I was very inspired by that. And I felt this camaraderie with him, this kinship with him, a melding of mission, so to speak. That I was just saying this on this other podcast, asking me about who I write with, all my co-authors. I've turned down a lot of projects for a lot of books that I didn't feel I really meshed with, but every co-author I've really worked with has been somebody that I have felt that their mission in life and my mission in life had a meeting of minds and hearts. This has certainly been true of the two of us, from the word go with the Go-Giver Project. That's why we have had so much fun together. And Brandon Webb, the Navy SEAL sniper, totally different universe than I have any experience with, but there's still a melding of missions, of values, and that was the case with David. So I love the guy. When we had our manuscript of The Go-Giver, of course, we both went off to every author we knew to look for endorsements. And David Bach came back and gave us an endorsement for The Go-Giver, which was so phenomenal and so sweet and so powerful. He said, not since Who Moved My Cheese have I been so impacted by a parable like this. It'll touch your soul and move your heart. I forget the exact words, but it was powerful. We put it on the front cover when the book first came out. And I think that David's quote, played a significant role in your and my early success with that book.
Yeah, I agree.
Because he was famous He was already like Elvis in the publishing world. And I was like the janitor. I mean, no one knew who I was. And you had a little more notoriety than I, but David was like a rock star. So I was grateful to him. The Go-Giver had been out for about a half a year, and David approached me and said, you know, I want to take the Latte Factor idea that everyone's heard me talk about since Oprah and make it into a parable. I've written a bunch of finance books, and I've reached millions of people, but there are tens of millions that I will never reach with a finance book, because there are people who will never pick up a finance book, but they'll pick up a book like The Go-Giver, a simple, sweet, short story that makes a point. So I want to do that, and I want to do that with you. Are you interested? And I said, well, let me check my schedule. I'm screenwriting right now. I said, of course. So we worked out a deal, and then life got in the way. Things happened. Specifically, what happened was two things. David's publisher said, nah, we're not interested. We don't think parables sell. And number two, the economy melted down. This is the end of 2008. Lehman Brothers, et cetera, et cetera. Economy went into a tailspin. The whole global economy kind of blew up. And David got very involved with other projects dealing with the changing circumstances. You and I wrote more books. I partnered with Brendan, wrote more books. Years went by. His publisher didn't want to do it. It just never happened. And that sometimes, you know, even the best, most likely to succeed ideas have a certain timing, certain rhythm, and you just can't push the river until the river arrives at that turn, at that bend in the path, and then suddenly you have a chance. And so that's what happened for us. It wasn't time yet.
Yeah, sometimes you just can't push the river. I love that. So let me ask you to discuss the premise, not of the book yet, the story, but actually the Latte Factor. For those who haven't heard that, and I think a lot of people have, and they have an idea, but for those who haven't, what do you and David mean by the Latte Factor?
So one of the fun things about the Latte Factor concept, which is also what the book revolves around, it shares something similar to the Go-Giver, which is, you know, the Go-Giver has what you and I like to call a cognitive dissonance built into it, the concept. Because Go-Giver is, of course, a twist on Go-Getter. And so it makes people go, blah. There's a little bit of a huh, which is one of the things that makes Go-Giver kind of interesting and intriguing. The Latte Factor has that too, because it's this idea that the secret to financial wealth is a cup of coffee. It's like, wait, you know, there's something that doesn't add up there. And what it leads to is an enormous amount of understanding, which I don't think is a terrible thing, because misunderstanding gives you a chance to have a conversation to clear up the misunderstanding.
Exactly.
With the Go-Giver, how often have you and I heard people say, well, Go-Giver means that as a business person, I should give all my stuff away for free. It's wrong to charge money for what you do. Well, no, that's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying at all. But you understand how people kind of get going down that path. And so it creates a great conversation to talk about value and the return for value and what you're contributing to the world and so forth. The same with the Latte Factor. People come away with this idea that David Bach is saying you can't buy latte. David Bach is saying you can't go to Starbucks. David Bach is saying you shouldn't buy luxuries. David Bach is saying you can't buy anything nice for yourself. You can't have any luxuries. You have to watch every penny. You have to budget every dime. And you have to be a miser. And it's actually none of those things. So first and foremost, the Latte Factor does not mean you can't have latte. It's a metaphor. And what the metaphor basically means is that there's a scene early in the book. So the hero of the book is, you said we're not getting into the book yet, but shall I go ahead?
That's okay, sure. So you know, sometimes life happens, John, that we try to do something
wasn't
one
my
way
plan.
and just, right.
You know, all of a sudden, I'm not in Hollywood. What can I say? So the hero of the book, Zoe Daniels, 28-year-old woman, living and working in New York City, living in Brooklyn, working in New York City, making a decent wage, decent salary, but not as rich as one might think. And she's struggling every month to make ends meet. So financial concerns are big for her. And she's sitting with the mentor character, our Pindar for this book, whose name is Henry Haydn, David Bach, Haydn, Bach, composer.
Doctor.
And Henry Haydn is talking with her, and she sees this photograph in this coffee shop that she falls in love with, and there's something about it that just draws her, and and he says, it's for sale, and she's like, I could never afford that. It's $1,200, the price tag, and he nods at the cup of coffee in her hand that she just bought and says, if you can afford that latte, you can afford that painting. And she's like, what are you talking about? And he walks her through the math of it, which is that one cup of latte, $4.50 or whatever it was she spent on that cup of coffee, which she buys 5 days a week in the afternoon. If she made her coffee at home, or she made it on a little coffee maker in the office, or whatever, if she didn't spend that $4.50 and instead deposited that into an account where it built interest, 5 days a week at the end of a year, what would she have? About $1,200, the price of the painting. And she looks at her coffee and says, you mean with this coffee, I could buy that photograph? And again, the point isn't that she can't have coffee. The point is that little things have great power. That's true in life. It's true in relationships. The little words we say to each other make an enormous difference. Parents to child, husband to wife, friends to friend. The words we say are huge. The same thing is true with the little dollars that we spend. The $5 here, the $10 there, the $25 in fees, and so forth and so on. It isn't necessarily the gigantic financial events of our lives that dictate our destiny. It's more an accrual of the little, seemingly insignificant financial events of our lives that can often shape our destiny. And you can control that. You can take charge of that. That's really what the core message of the book is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Deborah Stevens writes, I want a latte now. Never had one. You have.
Well, the book has worked.
By the way, Paul Coelho, I want to ask you this so I don't forget. And we all know who I think Paul Coelho is. He's the author of The Alchemist, one of my all-time favorite. That is one of my all-time favorites. I just absolutely love that story. Yes. But he and David, I guess, were having dinner one night, and that conversation ended up really, I guess, moving David closer to making sure that your project did have. Tell us about it. You go ahead.
That's the other half of the story, really. I mean, you asked what happened 10 years ago. You had a plan. Where did the book go? So, when we last left our heroes, they were hovering on a cliff. The book didn't get published. His publisher didn't want to do it. The financial crisis melted down. He got busy. I got busy. Life went on. Years went by. ... Right. And David is, I think, 2014 or 2011. I forget one year in the last few years. Paulo Coelho, author of, and whenever I say The Alchemist, no matter who I'm talking to, they almost invariably say, one of my top 10 favorites.
Right.
Everyone loves this book. So Paulo was launching a new book in the US, and David played a big role in helping him promote it. Just because David is, in fact, what do you know, a go-giver. Such a very sweet guy, incredibly genuine guy. And he helped Paulo out promoting the book. And so they were having dinner together. And I don't know where, in Madrid or New York, or probably New York. And apparently they were having drinks after dinner, and one drink led to another. And I wish I had a film of this. So into the wee hours, they're hanging, talking, and David said it was one of the most amazing experiences of his life, hanging and talking with Paulo Coelho. At one point, Paulo asked him, so David, what are you doing now? What are you working on? And David explained this book and that book, and he said, Paulo, I love you, man. No, he didn't say that. They weren't.
But you can't have my Bud Light. I think that was.
That's right. He said, but there's this book I'd really like to write, which is I'd like to write my financial ideas in a story like your books, a story that a lot of people would read. And Paulo looks at him and says, then David, you must do it. And you know how it is when you hear a message that you've heard before, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds of times, but for whatever reason, that person, that timing, that circumstance, it suddenly lands, it hits you. That's what happened for David. He went home and was like, he's right, I got to do it. And so he said, heck with it. My publisher doesn't want to do it. I'll find a new publisher. And he called me up and we got back together. We reinvigorated the engine. And finally, after a decade, we got the story written. So thank you, Paulo, for this book.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to talk about the 3 secrets to financial success, because really, yes. That is such a big part of it. And Al Dalla, a great friend of mine, he writes, is it the mindset that limits us then? And we all know mindset always limits us when the mindset limits us, which is a big challenge for most of us, I would say. And mindset certainly comes into this.
Yes.
So go ahead. I'm just going to give you the floor.
Well, mindset, yes, but also mindset that then translates into behaviors and actions.
Behaviors and actions, yep.
And so it is not just magically that the mindset translates into wealth or poverty. It is the habits the actual habits of action that we have every day, every week. So 3 simple financial principles. And if you read The Go-Giver, which you have, you obviously know, I could tell you the 5 laws of stratospheric success in 20 seconds, but you still got to read the book to see how it actually plays out. Mm-hmm. And this is like that. These are 3 secrets that are, Pindar might have said, they're so obvious that everybody thinks they know them. But everybody may know them, but does everybody do them?
And that's so key. And that was a big part with Zoe too, because at one point when she said, and I so loved it, I don't mean to interrupt you. This was just this is one of those things that I know when John David Mann writes something, because I know how things happen. But when the mentor, Henry, was telling her about, now you've already, and he talked about, I won't mention it because it gets into the weeds, but made the first, thing and took the first step. And she goes, I haven't yet, but I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, right.
And he's kind of looked there. He said, I'll let that one go.
Yeah, right.
So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You're thinking about that's excellent. So that's that and a quarter will buy you a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's right.
So the 3 principles of financial freedom. One of the great fun things about writing this book was taking everything David teaches, which is often 5 principles or 7 principles or 4 principles or 6 principles, and getting it down to 3. I knew I wanted 3, and so this is like classic David. The first principle is pay yourself first. And pay yourself first, as Henry says in the book, really means put yourself first. And put yourself first kind of flies in the face, all you go-givers out there, kind of flies in the face of what we've all been taught, which is be a selfless person, put other people first, don't put yourself first. But in this case, put yourself first is like the instruction they give you in the airline when they say, in the event of an emergency, oxygen masks will drop. If you're traveling with a child or unaccompanied child, put your oxygen mask on first. And your natural instinct is to put it on them first. And then you pass out, and then you can't do anybody any good at all.
Can't help anyone, exactly.
This is similar. You got to take care of yourself. So pay yourself first simply means this. What most people do normally when they get a paycheck is the first thing that comes out is money for the government. That's withholding, happens automatically. Next thing that comes out is their mortgage or their rent. They pay their must pays. You got to pay your utilities, you got to pay your cable, you got to pay your whatever. And then if there's anything left over, I would pay for groceries and whatever we have to pay for, fix up the place. If there's anything left, then that's for me. Maybe I'll put it in savings, maybe I'll buy something nice, or maybe I'll just put it to the side in another checking account, whatever. If there's anything left, well, and chances are there's nothing left. And David says, no. Turn that on its head. When your paycheck comes, before anything else gets paid, even before withholding, the first thing that happens is you take out a slice for you. For you for what? For you for your dreams. For you for your best life. You take out a little slice, and David recommends 10%. And he says an hour a day. If an 8-hour day, it's really 12%. But whatever the numbers are, it could be 1%. The point is, you take out a little slice of whenever you get paid first to fund your ideal life. Now, that might be retirement savings. It might be savings for a specific purchase you want to make. It might be many things. We get into that in the book. But the point is, you pay yourself first, then everybody else. And you know what it's like? It's like in that classic 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. The great Stephen Covey talked about this model where you take a glass jar and you put in sand, and you put in pebbles, and you put in small rocks. And then finally, you have these big rocks on the table, and you're going to put those in, but there's no room for them because it's been filled up with sand and pebbles and small rocks. And the big rocks represent what's most important in your life. And he said, what you got to do is, this glass jar is your day. And you got to take the biggest rock and put that in first. Then you can slip the gravel around it, and then you can slip the sand around it, and then you can even pour water around it, and they can all fill. They're all the less important things that you have to get done. But the big rocks are the important things in your life. What David's saying is, pay yourself first means that's financially your big rock. What's crucial to your own life? So that's the idea of pay yourself first. And of course, the mechanism for that, in the US, we call it a 401k. There are many others. There's IRAs, there's SEP plans, there are different kinds of retirement or savings plans.
And that's where I want people to read the book, because you actually do get into that as well. Yeah. But you make it so fun.
Yep.
And so simple. So that's number one. Okay. Secret number two.
Number two is the first thing he's in number 2 is he says, okay, we have to talk about budgets. And Zoe groans inside. And as she groans, I'm groaning. And maybe you're groaning too. And she doesn't want to tell him, but the truth is she hates budgets. It's like her least favorite word. And then Henry says, okay, first thing you got to do with the budget is throw it in the trash. He says, budgets don't work. Don't even try. The problem with budgets is, I mean, there are some people who love budgets, but they're like unicorns. We treasure them. They're amazing. And we love that they're there, but they're not most of us. For most of us, budgets are an unwelcome discipline that invariably fall apart and unravel within a few weeks at most. They're like diets, worse, but much worse. The problem with budgets is that the fundamental energy of a budget is the word don't. Here's how much you have. Don't spend more than that. Here's how much you have. It's a system of limitation. His principle is forget budgets. If your spending pattern depends on your discipline, depends on your willpower, depends on you doing it, it'll unravel. It's just human nature. You won't do it. If you have to write the check every 2 weeks or every month to put into that special account, after 6 months, you won't be writing that check. You just won't, because something else will come up. Something else always comes up. So instead, you make it automatic. And that's the secret number 2, make it automatic. That's what the automatic millionaire was all about. Right. And you know what? Make it automatic. In other words, he does it by actual automatic deposits and withdrawals and so forth, and tells you about that. But the idea of make it automatic is simply this: set yourself up for success.
Yes.
Set the system up for your win. If you don't set it up, then you're fighting the tide of entropy every day.
Well, you're fighting human nature, and human nature wins every time.
Yep. Yeah. So make it automatic. Number 1, pay yourself first. Number 2, make that pay yourself first automatic. So once you set it up, it goes without, you can sleep all week and it still happens automatically. You can't sleep all week.
Now, number 3 is the kind of counterintuitive one, maybe a little more counterintuitive because they're all counterintuitive, but now this has really little to do with money itself. The third one, right?
Yeah. Number 3, I mean, in a sense, number 3 could almost be number 1 because it's the foundation. It's what is at the heart of the whole living a fulfilled life. But it comes number 3 because sometimes you got to go through the first steps to understand the third, and that's Zoe's case. She wouldn't have ever got number 3. Number 3 is simply this: live rich now. Live rich now. Live a rich life today, tomorrow. And what that means is, you might be saving money for retirement, whatever retirement means. For most of us, retirement is some concept. It's an abstraction. If you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s, it's decades away. If you're in your 50s or 60s or 70s, it's imminent on your doorstep or maybe even already here. But in any case, what David's saying is, don't just be saving money for some abstract future time. Instead, most people won't even save for that purpose because money itself is an abstraction. Money is meaningless. Money is an empty vessel into which you pour identity, meaning, and value. So what's important to you? What is it you want to be doing? You could ask yourself the question, what is it that's not in my life right now, which, if I were doing or having or experiencing, would make my life vastly more fulfilling? And then ask yourself, how can I put that into place right now? And by right now, it might mean later this year. It depends. The things you could be doing right now, if it's travel, if it's certain kinds of things, you might need to save a little while and put aside time. But the point is, put it in your life now. Don't delay. Don't wait decades. But actually discover your rich life now, which means you have to figure out what matters to you, what's important to you.
Okay, so many more things I want to talk to you about, but we're kind of running out of time, so we're going to go quick on this. But these are so very important. Yeah. First is one of the or two of the characters in the book were a married couple.
Yeah,
and money at one point was a big part of the trouble they were. It wasn't the money itself; it was their attitudes about it, and it was what the mistakes they were making, the habits they had.
Yeah,
tell us about that. The importance of money to a married couple.
And you know, when you're writing a book, you fall in love with certain characters, and I fell in love with this couple. These guys,
they were great
from Oklahoma. I really enjoy them. Mm-hmm. In any case, so there's this couple in the book, and they were living large and making big money in the oil business. And at one point, it collapsed, and they were just drowning in debt. And the guy had medical emergency at the same time, as so often happens in life. Everything hits you at once. The key thing in their story is that they sat down one day and started talking about their finances and what to do about it. And the point there is, it's a well-known, often cited statistic that money is, if not number one, it's one of the top reasons for divorce, for marriages to fail, for relationships to fail. Money is such a difficult issue in so many marriages. However, it isn't the lack of money, really, that's the heart of most of that struggle. It's the lack of talking about it. Mm-hmm. Well, David, who has counseled thousands of couples about money over the decades, came to this and said, really, it's not having money, which is difficult, it's stress. It's not the two of you sitting down and talking about it and getting on the same page about it. Because once you get down on the same page about it, you've won more than half the battle. It's enormously difficult for a lot of people, because to do that requires being really honest in a way that is incredibly vulnerable for many people. So be able to sit down and talk about it honestly and say, what are we together going to do about that? Not keeping score as who has what, but just we. It's a huge step in a relationship.
What's the big message that you and David would like people to take away from this?
I'm going to answer that two ways, because I think, for David, it's the same message he's had consistently his entire career, which is that I would like to help set you free, and you can set yourself free to live your ideal life. Not some, dream castle life, but a realistic version of your ideal life. You can do that. You can do this. I have another message, what I want to layer on to that, which is that you'll notice that Zoe, the character in the story, she hears all these things from this guy, Henry, over a course of days, but she's not really getting it, or she's not really believing it. Or she might even believe it in a glimmer, but it's like, maybe that would work for other people, but not for me. She's just not seeing it. It's similar to Joe in The Go-Giver, really.
I was just thinking that very thing, yeah.
Yeah, and she reaches a point almost at the end of the road where she's like about to throw her hands up in the air and say, this stuff is all just pie in the sky, idealistic. It's not me. It's not something that I could ever do. And something happens in the book, and I won't say what, but she finally hears this message from someone who's very close to her. It's not the mentor. It's not the guy who knows everything. It's not the counselors in the book. It's someone close to her who tells her something that all of a sudden makes a transformation happen. And everything that she's heard suddenly becomes alive in her. And what I want to say is that that's so often true. It happened for David and Paulo Coelho, right? Paulo in that restaurant, sitting across the table from David, saying, you must do this. Suddenly David realized he had to do it. The message I want to give is, you may be that person for someone else. It may be about the Latte Factor and money. It may be about the Go-Giver. It may be about something entirely unrelated. It may be about something about that person's life, but you may be, in fact, you probably are that person who, when you say something, it will make the difference in that person's life. Never underestimate the impact and the depth of the impact that you can have in someone else's life, no matter who else they've talked to.
John David Mann is co-author with David Bach of the new bestseller, mega bestseller, The Latte Factor, Why You Don't Have to Be Rich to Live Rich. Now, there are two URLs that Shannon has been posting. One is to the special book page where there are bonuses and all different things, and it's a lot of fun. The other is directly to the page on Amazon. So make sure you get that. This is a book that not only are you going to want to read yourself, but you're going to want to buy copies for everyone in your life who you love. You're going to make sure your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, your nephews, and anyone you're mentoring has this book. It's a delightful story with a brilliant how-to message. Really, it's a masterpiece. Let's see, just some of the other things before we end. Check out the links for our upcoming, July, I guess, Kathy Tajanel's and my upcoming Go-Giver Entrepreneurs Academy. We limit those to 10 people, as you know, so we go very deep into your business. It's 2.5 days in Orlando, Florida. The last one sold out, so make sure you go to the link and get registered for it. Check it out. Join our Go-Giver influencers Facebook page. And of course, John David Mann and I have a few books out on the Go-Giver theme, so you can check those out as well. Anyway, hey, John, it has really been great speaking with you. I love getting to talk with you, and you always just bring so much wisdom and so much joy to me, so thank you so much. Good. Best of success to you and David both on this classic.
Thank you much. Thank you much. We've been doing this for over a decade, and it just gets more fun all the time.
Meantime, I'm Bob Burg, and I'm wishing each and every one of you a great day and look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye-bye.